So tonight's Jewish Scouting on the council level is basically doing an overview. The first part will be the formation and the support of a local Jewish scouting committee on scouting, Jewish committee on scouting. And the presenters will be myself and Rabbi Peter Hyman, Ted Goldstein, and Richard Simon. And then the second half of our meeting tonight will be just what can we bring to a council that a council would perceive as helpful. And we'll have Howard Prager and Alan Smason be the presenters for that one. So let me move this and get to the next slide.
Yes.
I'll be short or quick, I suppose. Let me start off by saying there are 4 points that I'd like to bring up about the local council, and that is that the Jewish Committee on Scouting and the council staff advisor, they should be part of the organized council structure. And in many councils, they have established what they call religious relationships committees, and the various faith committees on scouting are subsumed under that religious relationships committee. That's how we do it in our National Capital Area Council, and I know in other councils they do something similar. Being an official committee within your council means that your council executive should assign a person to be your staff advisor, and that person, at least in my experience, has been really helpful and very supportive for the things that our local council committee wants to do. Another thing that your local council gives you the ability to do is to set up something called a custodial account, and so that means that they can put your resources, your funds, your money into an account that they don't use, and it's available to you through your staff advisor. And it's sort of like the order of the arrow. They have money that they spend for patches and for various other activities, and the Jewish Committee's custodial account can be used the same way. The other thing that most councils use is a software platform called Black Pug for registrations, and it's a fairly robust software. Allows you to do a lot of different kinds of registrations if you have big events, and the big events could be all the kinds of things that many local Jewish committees on scouting do. We do a merit badge fair in our council, but even small things that we've done, you can do on Black Pug. Register people, they can pay their money. You don't have to go through a separate send me your check kind of thing. And we found it to be very, very efficient and very worthwhile. And if you ought to talk to your councils, if you're working with them, to get this set up for you, and so that you can use it. And then I guess the last thing, maybe the most important thing for a local committee, is you want to get communications out to the people in your council, to both the scouts and the leaders, adults in the council, about activities that you have, so they can be aware of it. And the council, many councils have newsletters or other communications mechanisms that might be available to you now. They've gone, at least in my council, they've gone away from paper copies of these things. They don't mail stuff out anymore, but they do have some very nice online feeds that they send out to people, and some can be done on a very robust level. I'll show you a few slides. So the first one was of Elliot Klugman blowing 2 kudu horn shofars at the same time in 2007, and our chaplain, Rabbi Art Vernon, and myself and Elliot Klugman also at this conference in 2007. Here are some notorious people. Here's Rabbi Peter Hyman and Elliot and Paul Kramer, AJ Kramer, and Lou, what's his name? Lou, come on, somebody help me.
Jay Lenrow.
Jay Lenrow, and Jeff Goldsmith, and And the last one is
Oh,
Jay
that's,
Schnapp. And here's Paul Kramer, myself, and Rabbi Hyman in 2008. This is Jay Schnapp, myself, Elliot, and Rabbi Vernon. Some activities that we've done locally in our council. Here is an interfaith or multi-faith Pinewood Derby that a Muslim troop and pack and a Jewish pack sponsored, but we had boys of all faiths participate in this. And these are the kind of pictures I think that you were looking for. Here's setting up the electronics for this Pinewood Derby. Very, very professional. And this is the chairman here. His name is Julian Tishkov of the local Jewish Committee on Scouting in the National Capital Area. And this is another one of our committee members, Jeffrey Cohn, and a couple of his boys at this Pinewood Derby. And here's, the boys doing a color guard. And the famous camera lady, Phyllis Stein, looking good. This is in 2013, Phyllis. And one of the things that we've done, an activity that I think is really, really cool, we talked a little bit about this, is cooking at one of our Northeast region conferences. And here are some of the dishes, like this is brisket that we made, and chicken soup, and sweet potato fries with pigs, and really good. An interesting meeting that our committee had was at our committee chairman's home in his sukkah. And this is a couple of people on our National Jewish Committee at Yehuda Katz's home for a dinner and a committee meeting in his sukkah. And it was a lot of fun, and it was great. We even ordered kosher pizza out, and it came in. So that was wonderful. This is Yehuda Katz. He's the current chairman of our National Jewish Committee on Scouting, National Capital Area Council Jewish Committee on Scouting, and Jeffrey Cohn. Another activity that local council that I thought was just wonderful, and we followed the guidance that's on our website, and we did a Tu B'Shabbat Seder, and the kids came, and the parents helped out, and they served the food at the proper time. They all went through the Seder. It was a wonderful activity. And then in 2018, we took the Northeast region to the Jewish War Veterans Museum in Washington, D.C. And this is a group of us that were there. And we presented Michael, Rugel, a high award when we went there. It was very nice. He's the director of the Jewish War Veterans Museum in Washington, D.C. And this is Paul Kramer with his famous collection of patches, and a lot of them have to do with religious emblems and stuff like that. We also put on at the University of Scouting a terrific display of Jewish memorabilia and all kinds of stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun. And we had a bunch of people there, and here's some of our friends. Some of you may know Rashid. He was there, and his son, and they just did a terrific job. And this was the conference we had in 2019. And these were all the attendees at that conference. And this was a pack, blue and gold, for one of our local packs, Pack 1818, and a couple of scouts that were crossing over to become AOL scouts. This pack also had a very, very nice outdoor activity just recently, last spring, and they went on a creek hike, and they went jumping into the water and doing all that kind of stuff. And of course, now there are girls in it too, so it was just wonderful. There's a girl doing the same thing that the boys were doing. So I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to ask Rabbi Hyman to proceed with his portion of the program.
Thank you very much, and thanks for those nice memories, those great pictures, and lots of stuff. Tonight, I just want to talk about briefly how to market to rabbis and clergy. And why I say clergy is because Tuesday of this past week, I sat with our local district executive and the chairman of the district committee in my office as we presented scouting to not a rabbi, but to my friend who's the local priest at the Catholic Church. And I won't be long, but one of the things that I've done over the years and have come to realize is, especially given that there are at the present time there's such ambivalence in places about who we are, what we represent, and that sort of thing. What I told Father Nash and what I would urge folk who are going out to meet with clergy to establish units and make a connection between a local Jewish committee on scouting and a shul is this. Again, from speaking as a rabbi and to another clergy person, one of the things that I always focus on is you put a troop or a pack into your institution, into your shul, into your whatever, and you get more people coming through your door, and that resonates with my colleagues in a powerful way. And then, of course, after that, we always talk about the Jewish community on scouting, how it can interface with what's going on, and the values of scouting, and how the values of scouting are very connected to Jewish law, Jewish belief, Jewish worldview, and that sort of thing. But if you go out and you want to make a presentation to a rabbi or a president of a congregation, please think about using that as an opening, as an entree into the discussion, because I will tell you that it really does resonate with rabbis and temple officials, and they listen to it. And I don't have a whole lot more to say. You can ask questions, but that's really what I wanted to speak to and present, because it does make a difference in the presentation. Questions, thoughts, comments? Good.
Howard?
Yeah. Rabbi, have you done this with, so I've got a Chabad near me, and I keep thinking that they really should, and the rabbi has several young children. And I've said to him on occasion, I said, have you thought about scouting? And I've dropped off stuff. Do you think that will work for him?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And actually, we've had in the past, we've had Chabad representation, not always the right fit, but we've had representation with Chabad over the years. And what I always say is that we have a program that can be tooled and shaped to the specifics of whatever it is, whether it's a Reform congregation or Chabad or whomever else. And we have the proof and the history to prove that. And if you need any help, let me know. I'll be glad to help.
And Rabbi Hyman, Rabbi Vernon has offered his help as well. Anybody that needs to contact a rabbi or center or something like that, if you have any questions or they have any questions.
As a matter of fact, I happen to be friendly. I live in Easton. Ocean City is about an hour and a half away. I happen to be friendly with the Chabad rabbi in Ocean City. He's got kids. He's got 4 kids. They're like between 6 months and 5 years old, 6 years old. God bless him. But he was in the office the other day. He saw my scouting. He said, "You're a scout?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Tell me about it." And I had a chance to share some thoughts with him as well. So if we're concerned about strengthening who we are and who we reach, that's something that we should be looking at seriously, and it's doable.
And I think also it's really important to try to get rabbis involved in your local committee if that's at all possible, and certainly on the regional level. and at least in the Northeast region, we have appointed a regional chaplain, and we do have a national chaplain. And I think those people are very, very helpful for a lot of reasons. And they make us really Jewish. That's part of it. So with
And the
that,
other thing,
I'm sorry.
the other thing is, it may be more important to have rabbis um, in places other than, I mean, I'm not diminishing our presence in the Northeast, but it's really important for a multiplicity of reasons to have rabbis involved uh, in areas where the Jewish population is not as plentiful as in where most of us are.
Yes, I agree. So
Okay,
Ted, are you ready?
excuse me, Rabbi, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
How do you, Joel Stoltz in Tucson, how do you convince a rabbi that feels that scouting will just take away from their existing programs, even though you've shown them how it would add to the programs? How do you convince a rabbi to look the other way?
You know what? That's an interesting question. I'm not sure if I can. You have to be open-minded. I do say that based on my own experience, not everybody comes for the same reason. Um, my dear friend in the rabbinate, Rabbi Jimmy Kessler, says synagogues need to have a 7-Eleven attitude. Sometimes you want gas, sometimes you want a candy bar, sometimes you want a Coke, sometimes you want to use the bathroom. But you better have all those things available when the customer pulls in.
I like that. I'm going to
No, no.
use that.
Yeah, please do, because that's seriously, that's my approach. And not everybody comes to my synagogue for services in my sermon. All right, no matter how great they are, they're not interested. But they do come for other things that we offer. That's why we have in-depth programming, and this provides another avenue. And not only does it provide another avenue, but I don't have to tell any of you that this also, we have a history. We have a history of success. We have a history of engagement.
So, and also, Rabbi Hyman, the things like our Scout Shabbat and having breakfasts or lunches or whatever you do at various, it can really help people. But let's move on to Ted. Ted, are you ready?
We're addressing, basically, I'm addressing Jewish Committee on Scouting, organizations and their relationship with the council. So what I'm looking at is there's some history of what we've been able to do in our council and some of the pluses and minuses that have come along with that. A lot of emphasis that we've had within Heart of America Council, which is the greater Kansas City area, because we're not a heavily Jewish area. Obviously, we're not in the Northeast. We're in Florida. So, this is the situation we have here. We have a very active Jewish community, but it's not all that large. What we're trying to concentrate on is Jewish awareness and presence within the council. Basically, just to have people know that there are Jews and Jewish scouts involved in the program. To that end, what we do is we have 2 scout camps in our council, two scout reservations, Bartle and Nash. At Bartle, which is the large Scouting BSA camp, we have a chapel. There's a Jewish chapel, outdoor chapel down there, which I think is on Richard's background, his background photo. We have Bartle, and we do services for every session. It's usually on scouts on the Sundays that are visitors days down there. So at least if we don't do a Shabbat service at camp, at least we do a Sunday morning daily service, so that we're there. We also participate whenever we can, whenever there's an availability or a function going on within a council event. A couple of years ago, there was a major camporee type activity out at a racetrack here in town. And we actually had a sukkah. It was during Sukkot, so we had a sukkah set up and people were able to come to it. The other things that we try to do is our district, one of our districts within our council, holds their monthly roundtables or resource forums at the Jewish Community Center, which our local Jewish Committee on Scouting forum financially sponsors the space and maintenance for that. But at least once a month, all of the units, leadership of the units, and other activities that go on at these resource forums are held in a Jewish Community Center. So it's there to big Jewish awareness and presence. The biggest thing that we have done recently really is with Sofim. And those of you who are not familiar with Sofim, Sofim is the Israel Scout organization, and they do a friendship caravan around the country during the summer. They have not for the last 2 summers, obviously, because of the COVID situation, but for the last number of years, last 25 years or so, we've always brought the Sofim Friendship Caravan to Kansas City. For the last 4 years or so, we have had the additional interest from our council to the point that they do a performance at each of our 2 scout camps. This is cost sharing from the council and our Jewish Committee on Scouting, but at least it brings a major awareness, okay, to scouts in a community where there is not a heavily Jewish identity. Other than that, it's, we try to do the best we can. My only negative that we have had with our council was or is scheduling of council events from ignoring the Jewish calendar as to holidays and stuff like that. We have tried and tried and tried, but it falls on pretty much deaf ears. We give them the dates; they know the calendar. They just don't pay attention to it. So, any other questions or any questions?
Thank you.
My comment would be that we, along with several other members, were part of an interfaith committee with the Catalina Council. And after a 2-year abbreviation of a previous agreement, we actually got our board to approve a whole holiday schedule. I think those who have had trouble with it, you got to keep the fight up. You just have to keep the pressure on. There are things are going to be fall through, but in point of fact, when you remind them a scout is reverend as part of the scout oath, eventually they listen.
Yeah, it's a continuing problem. So let's move on. The next presenter is Richard Simon, and you have just about enough time.
Okay. I'm from Kansas City, also with Ted and NormCon, and just some key takeaways that I want to add was basically it doesn't take a whole lot of a number of people to have a committed Jewish presence. We call it the key 3. We have 3 folks, which are kind of our main folks that keep things going with the Jewish Committee on Scouting. So it doesn't take very much. In other councils, I know there's just 1 person. In other councils, there's more. So it doesn't take much, but just the couple of people that do it. One of the big things we also do is we teach the religious emblems. We do pay for the emblems if the units can't pay for them, and we do present them at the Scout Shabbat. So we do make sure those get planned, and that's another way to get publicity out there. We do get some annual donations. As Ted said, we do help to make sure that the resource forum is a Jewish community center. And then we also have the Sofim. So we do get donations for all those things that we funnel through the Jewish committee. And we do have, I think Norm's on here also, we do have our account at council. So we do funnel it through like we were talking about earlier. We also make sure that we approve or we get nominations. We solicit nominations for Shofar Awards and get those presented to recognize all those folks that are helping the Jewish community in scouting. We do contribute to the presence. we try to in calendaring. We have issues there, like Ted was mentioning. We do participate in the local chaplains training that happens to make sure there is the Jewish presence, and we do make sure that when they're talking about interfaith ceremonies, that they know kind of what the language should be, what things to say and what things they shouldn't say. If there would be anybody that's Jewish there. We bring the Sophim there. And then the last big thing we do is the camp, like Ted was saying, the services at our summer camp. And this is just a picture of, happens to be me leading services. And I believe that in this case, we didn't have any Jewish kids or adults there. We just had a big troop that was interested in Judaism and wanted to come and see what it was like. So it was an interfaith experience where we were able to help explain and ask questions. They could ask questions and we were able to answer, and they could see what everything was about. So those are kind of the highlights I had. So is there any
Richard,
questions?
thank you for the presentation. That's very nice. And your council synagogue over there looks a lot like the Philmont one, except you can go through yours. You can't go through the Philmont one completely. But how do you raise money?
It's basically been just soliciting the folks that we know, that the Jewish people, the Jewish folks within the community that have had some connection to scouting. So,
Wow.
I mean, it's been emails. We did do a poker tournament pre-COVID. We raised a little bit of money that way when we were looking to do that more, a couple more times, but of course we haven't been able to do that. But that's basically, it's been solicitation.
Well, that's great. So I'll let you stop sharing, and we'll go on to the second half. And timing is pretty good. It's 7:31. So I'd like to introduce Howard Prager, and he's going to start the second session, which is just what can we bring to a council that a council would perceive as helpful. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Howard?
Yep. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. So let me pull up my presentation. And last year, I believe, for those of you who are on here, knew I'd spoken about the Walk of Faith. And this year, I guess last year, yeah. This fall, we decided that we were going to pivot, that we felt that this was important enough, that the programming is important enough, and that the message is important enough that we were going to create some virtual programs. And we've had some great success with that. A couple of weeks ago, we just did a program with the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta for Black History Month about scouting, the history of the Baptist faith, Ebenezer Baptist Church, and Dr. King. And so this is one of the things that we are striving for. As you can see, here's a quote from Dr. King from the memorial in Washington. And we would have slides, and I'll show you in a few minutes the slides that we have as people are getting ready for the presentation. So we needed to, as I say, pivot online, and wanted to suggest that people wanted to learn about other faiths and increase tolerance. With all that's gone on the last year or two, we felt that this was more important than ever. Our parameters were we wanted to do something quick. We felt that an hour was probably about the longest that we can get people, kids especially, to sit. So this is how fast it was: a 5-minute intro, a 13-minute video, a 20-minute breakout discussion group, 5-minute large group discussion, 15-minute Kahoot game, which the kids absolutely love, and a 5-minute wrap up. So you can see we had a lot of elements in this. We had a preparatory slideshow that talked about the faiths covered in the presentations and the religious emblems. I mean, and supported anyone who wanted to get a religious emblem. The first one we actually did and put together in 4 weeks. And from all the events, we've done these 3 times now, We've gotten outstanding Net Promoter Scores from them. So the first two were in August and October, and here are the challenges. First of all, the opportunities were bringing together. We only have two faith committees right now in our council, Jewish Committee on Scouting and the Catholic Committee on Scouting. Then we want to say, do we want to do one video as we're searching for videos, or several? We knew it needed to be engaging and happened to be able to find a TED Ed video that talks about the 5 great faiths. And so we used that. We wanted to do it before school started up. It was adult plan, but we had youth input and it was totally youth led. And then we had a couple of people from outside our council join us. Methodist Scout representative from Northern Illinois, Jim Leppard, and our friend Bruce Strager from Suffolk County and now from California. Our challenges were numerous. We had to build this planning team fast. We decided the end of June that we were going to start. And so right after July 4th, we did this and got started. We wondered, can we do this and pull this off in 4 weeks? Because we decided we wanted to do it before kids went back to virtual school. We needed to learn about all the logistics and using Zoom features, and needed to figure out how to apply YPT to keep all safe online and in breakout rooms. We decided a Zoom license was needed, that we had an offer to have a Zoom webinar, but we said, no, we need a regular Zoom meeting because we want to screen people as they came on to make sure that they were right. And we want to have this to be repeatable. So results from this, it brought many faiths together to learn a little about each faith. It gives Scouts more of an insight about other, oh, this is what they said, I'm sorry. So let me not read this, you could read this. These were quotes from the evaluations.
Very nice.
So the agenda was as followed. As I said, we did a welcome and introduction. We had both a Boy Scout and a Scout girl, female Scout, to be the co-hosts of it, which worked very nicely. And we used several different pairs like that. The video, as I said, the TED Ed video on 5 major world religions. And then you can see that was the order. These were the religions in the video. Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. It was at a level that we thought was appropriate for Scout age kids, and they seemed to all like it. Next event, so we did these 2 in the fall, and I said, we want to do something else. What's our next one? And I thought, well, we're doing this on Zoom. Why stay within Illinois? How can we get bigger? How can we get better? How can we get broader? So I just reached out of the blue to Ebenezer Baptist Church. I knew they had a Scout troop. And I reached out, and sure enough, they responded and said they'd be happy to work with us to do this. We initially wanted to do it on Martin Luther King's birthday weekend, but it was just too fast because we're trying to plan this after Thanksgiving, and with the holidays, we said, let's move it back to February for Black History Month. They embraced the opportunity. It's the first time ever that they've done this. I'm amazed that they hadn't done this before. They just said it must be totally youth planned and led. And they had their Scout Leader Council and SPL lead the whole program and all the planning. It took longer for us to get the commitment from them. It took a little while going back and forth. So I was thinking about what the heck can Plan B be? And there were unprecedented logistical needs because with reaching out to them, they've got a worldwide audience and certainly a big name. So we had to step up with our marketing, with our communication and capacity. And so now for safety's sake, with thinking that we're going to have hundreds of people, which we did, we turned it to a webinar with a presentation by each of the Scouts, Q&A, and they liked the Kahoot game too. So this was the opening slide. with our Northeast Illinois Council and the Scout BSA Troop 213. So I'm just close this part with everybody can be great because everybody can serve. Our results from this were unprecedented, 100% net promoter score, over 200 people nationwide participated, a Q&A that was highly engaging and informative. We've now got great friendship and camaraderie with the leaders of Troop 213 and interest amongst many scouting faith leaders who joined on for this. As Dr. King said, we must learn to live together as brothers or we will perish together as fools. Our next event that we're looking to do while we're still doing Zoom ones, and this is in the offering, is possibly doing one with the Tri-Faith Initiative in Omaha. The Tri-Faith is the first place in the country where there is a campus purposely built with a synagogue, mosque, and church. And this is from their website and what they do. And they do a lot of work in this in interfaith understanding. What I've got to find out, they do not have a scout unit. So I need to find out if there's any scout leaders or scouts that are part of the initiative. Because one thing the committee said is, as good as this is, we want to keep this scout focused and scout run. So, so we'll let you know if you're interested. And then I was just going to share one other thing briefly, but while I do, I'm certainly open to questions that you may have that I can share about this.
Howard, on the interfaith with the Ebenezer Baptist Church, did the Scouts need a separate device to do the Kahoot and do the webinar?
Yeah, that's a good question. And for both of the presentation, all the presentations actually, we encourage them to have a separate device. Yes.
So Howard, I want to first compliment you on, I think something really new that you have, charted a path for. But interestingly, it occurred to me that, local councils could do this locally. So you could partner with one of your other faith committees and find a church or a mosque and do this at a local level.
We have two faith committees, Phil. We have a Catholic committee and a Jewish committee.
Right.
And we're the ones who form the Walk of Faith committee.
Right, right.
So, and so we did locally for the first one. And I decided that if we're doing Zoom, why are we limited locally? So that's why we reached out down to Atlanta. And until we go back face to face, and we're looking forward to that day, I wanted to take advantage of being able to go really anywhere in the world to include whatever is right for the next walk of faith. But
kudos, my friend.
We're going to focus primarily in the council area.
Kudos. This is wonderful. So I'd like to, it's now 7:42. I'd like to go on to our next presenter, is Alan Smason. And we probably will have time for some questions at the end. So Alan, you're up next.
All right, thank you very much. A very good presentation. Again, I'm trying to get my my screen up here if I can. Just one second. Trying to see. Can everybody see that first? Yep. Okay. Yep. All right, very good. So again, I want to just start before I get started with this. I mean, the idea of these talks tonight is how can we help our council? How can we make ourselves more important to the council by doing these things? In my particular case, I want to let everybody know that there are walks of faith that promote other religions other than the major religions of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. But in my particular council in New Orleans, the Southeast Louisiana Council, more than 60% of the registered units were Catholic. So it was a daunting challenge for me to find a lot of other different faith groups to begin with. But that was the first aspect of what we were doing. Our council needs to know that we're catering to the people that they're catering to. But in addition, I made it very essential that when I put on the 10 Commandments hike, that the Jewish presence was much higher than what they are we have about a 2% representation in a local basis. If you look at 1.5 to 2% is the total amount of Jewish people in all of New Orleans, and yet on the hike, 2 out of the 10 stops that we had on the tour, as it were Jewish. One was either Reform and Orthodox, one was conservative and Reform. There always some involvement that was much higher of an incidence. And the reason why was that it was the Jewish Committee on Scouting that was putting it on. And I thought that many people had not been exposed to Judaism, and indeed they had not. So it's very important that we understand about that. Now, I'm starting off here. Here you see 2 Islamic people who are about to make their presentation. And you can see one of the things that I use as a tool that costs a little bit of money to do, but if you're going to put on a 10 Commandments hike, it's a great graphic, it's a great visual to have an actual commandment that you have in Hebrew and then the English words thereof. Of course, it is a problem for some of the Jewish faith groups, the more observant, to actually have the name of God represented on the very first commandment. So you have to deal with that. The other aspect of it is that, as I'll explain, we have to be welcoming and inclusive. So we don't call these each commandment by a commandment number 1 or commandment number 2. We refer to the stops along the way that we take rather than talk about the commandments, because the commandments are numbered differently. They all stem, of course, from the original Hebrew, which we know, but the Catholics divide up the last commandment between the commandment of basically thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife as separate from thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's property, etc. So there are aspects that are different. So we don't ever refer to the 7th commandment as thou shalt not or whatever, because it would not be the same for other faith groups. We want to always be welcoming and inclusive. I started out doing these 10 commandment hikes based on the success of what we had in our Arizona area at the Grand Canyon Council. I was notified about that. And then again, I started around 2004. We started on Leap Day, which happened to be February 29th of 2004. And we were so successful, we had 8 blocks long of representation of adults and scouts with a hike that started about 12 noon and didn't end until about 6 o'clock. And it was massive. It was just amazing. I learned along the way how to do these things. And so what I'm telling you is that there are aspects of these hikes that you learn. But the most important thing I learned from the beginning was I investigated what went on in Orlando before I put on my hike. Orlando tried to do the same thing. They had the wrong representation on their hike, and it caused a lot of friction. This is back, of course, before the adult standards changed. They had a church that was on the way that promoted a different agenda than what was being promoted by the Boy Scouts of America, and caused friction and all kinds of problems. So we have to consider who you're going to have on the hike, which people are going to be representing you, representing their faith group. Are they interested in scouting? Are they doing this begrudgingly? You want them to understand this is for their own benefit as well. So we have, for 10 Commandments hikes, not walks of faith necessarily, but 10 Commandments hikes, always incorporate Judeo-Christian religions that at least recognize the Jewish Bible as well as the Christian Bible, and that's Islam as well. Let me see if I can get back. There we go. All right, so we're trying to get to go forward, and hopefully that incorporates Sikhism, as I said, Buddhism, Shinto, Zoroastrian, the Baha'i faith may not necessarily recognize the 10 Commandments, although there are aspects of the Baha'i faith that do recognize Moses and Jesus, for instance, and Muhammad as figures that went before their particular religious faith group's leader, and so of course might be recognizing them more than some others. Again, I use the kudu horn. One of the things I want to mention is it is a symbol of not only scouting through the wood badge, but it is also obviously a Jewish religious artifact. We use it for Rosh Hashanah. I am very, very taken with this particular kudu horn. It was given to me back in Cleveland by a group known as the Silver Family. And of course, I always mention the fact that silver is the highest emblem that we have, a precious metal in scouting, for silver beaver and silver antelope and silver buffalo. But the Silver Family gave me that to replace the horn that I used on the first 2 hikes in 2004, because we switched it to the more, we thought, I guess, appropriate day for the Friday after Thanksgiving. The reason why we went that, we know the kids are off from school. We knew we could get good representation, and that most of the churches and the synagogues or other faith groups would be open. So again, we hope that you all understand the reason, significance, why we use a kudu horn and what that's all about. Again, we use the kudu horn to enforce the way that the hike is run. The kudu leader has that horn, and after the opening, which I've always done with the Hebrew names for the blasts of Shivarim and Tekiah, of course, Tekiah Gedola to open and to end, and of course the hike. And we also use Shivarim. All of those blasts are given by a figure. This is absolutely a rector of the Episcopal faith who is reading out the blasts, which I'm giving out. It gives them an involvement. They feel, like they're part of the hike, and it really, makes everybody feel like when they're seeing the opening ceremonies, that it's almost like the Olympics or whatever, that you have that kind of ceremony that goes with it. Makes it seem special. Again, some of the kids who use the scouts that have it, we can make them the leader, give them the opportunity to be the one in front that nobody passes with that horn. It keeps everybody in line and stops the hike when you have to have everybody catch up or whatever. You say, hold on a second, we need to let everybody catch up. One of the other aspects of the hike is we mentioned the hike leader enters and exits. They enter first, they exit first. Nobody is allowed to do that. And after that last blast of the Tekiah Gedola, that signals the event is over. Again, we covered this earlier. Always talk about being welcoming and inclusive. Never refer to a commandment as the first or the second commandment. Always talk about, this is our first stop, this is our second stop, this is our third stop. You that way don't cause any dissension or whatever, in case somebody says, well, that's not really my seventh commandment, that's yours. Okay, the other thing, again, as you can see in that first commandment there, you see that there's a word missing, which of course is the name of God that would be represented on that commandment. In deference to the Orthodox members of my own faith, I left that off. They said that they would prefer not having that on there just because it is the name of God. Again, people love to carry those tablets, just like the hike leaders get to carry the kudu horn. Carrying those commandments are really a lot of fun for people. And it's always a way to have one ready for the next stop so that the scouts will carry the commandment that's going to be done next. So you keep them involved, and they happen to love that as well. Okay, again, I mentioned covering the stops, and you can see on this particular representation of the pamphlet that I have, this is from the interior of the pamphlet. I've got the temple that's represented, the Reformed Jewish Temple, Temple Sinai, Gates of Prayer, 2 Jewish Reform groups that particular year. And then I've got Touro Synagogue. Now, why do I have 2? Because what happened was we opened at Temple Sinai, but a representation from Gates of Prayer was there as well. So we had 2 different Reformed temples, and then Touro Synagogue, a 3rd Reformed temple on this particular hike. You notice also we have the names of the various leaders, the names of the commandments, so people can see what's coming up. Honor thy father and thy mother, obviously, is number 4 for us, but it was one of the later presentations. They don't necessarily have to be in the order that they receive, and I find that it gets rather boring if every year the first stop is going to have the first commandments. I happened on this particular case for the Jewish commandment of the first one, but the first stop happened to have that because it's specific to the Jewish faith. And I try to put the one with coveting thy neighbor's wife on the end of a Catholic group, so as to make it maybe for them as well. Also, we usually have lunch along the way, so you notice at the bottom, stop for lunch. People either provided their own lunches. Usually what we did was we provided, when we first started, kosher hot dogs and kosher buns, and everything was kosher from the get-go, not because the people on the hike were Jewishly observant, but to show them that we were eating in a special manner, in a way that was evocative of being faithful for Jews. Therefore, everybody participated and took part in it. And let me tell you, they enjoy those hot dogs to the utmost. Again, we always ask people to use the Cub Scout, the Scouts BSA, or the venturing sign thereof to start or begin a hike to get everybody's attention, and everybody would pay attention. We also suggest that you use the hike for religious presentations. This is an official presentation on the hike given to that Episcopal leader by a member of the Episcopal Church. given to her for the St. George's Award. This is an award from the actual church. Even though it was given in her church on our hike, it was completely unknown to her. It was a high honor. And again, I had another opportunity to do the same thing with one of my own rabbis earlier on when I made a presentation to Rabbi Topolovsky. I don't know if anybody knows Yuri Topolovsky, who's in Silver Spring, Maryland now, in that area. He was an Eagle Scout, is an Eagle Scout, and he received the Jewish Eagle Scout certificate from the National Jewish Committee on Scouting. So you can make the hike a special opportunity to reward people or to acknowledge people for their involvement in scouting. Also, we want to talk a little bit about what Judaism is all about. And again, here's a great opportunity. Here is a rabbi, a Reformed rabbi, who's actually pointing out on the scroll. That scroll is being held by yours truly and the Catholic Committee Scouting Chair from Houma, Louisiana. She's showing where the 10 Commandments appear first in the Torah scroll in Exodus. And again, this was, believe it or not, one of the leaders in the Reform community who ended up not being supportive of scouting years later. And then after the changes were made, came back into the fold. And again, we were happy to have her in. This was a very famous picture that we did back in 2010 at AP Hill for the National Jamboree. So that many of you will recognize that as well. Again, an opportunity to talk about the different aspects of Judaism, the Ner Tamid, the Aaron HaKodesh, etc. When you go into a house of worship, when the scouts came in to see a Reformed temple, even a Reformed temple, opening up the Aaron HaKodesh and seeing the Torah scrolls was just the audible gasps were just amazing, and they had never seen that. Many of these people are exposed to Judaism for the first time and get to understand a little bit about our furniture, our pertinences, what we do in our synagogue. Again, an opportunity to highlight what you're doing, get the press involved. It's very important that the council know that you are doing work and getting, good, positive PR for them to perhaps get more membership later on. The idea is to put a good, positive face on scouting, especially now that we've had so many references to the past. We want to move forward and use this as an opportunity to embellish what we do as Jews. I don't want to go on too much further. One of the other things is all the different patches that are involved. I'm just going to mention that we also have the opportunity to do, besides the patches for collecting, we also have the water bottles that we have that are here. I've got a couple here, one for black and gold for the saints, etc., that we were showing. And again, they can be patriotic or they can be purple, green, and gold like we had for the for Mardi Gras. Finally, police escorts, very important. If you can get the cooperation of a local police force, I really recommend it. They will be more than happy for you to do those sorts of things. This is at the Latter-day Saints Church, where we had kosher food presented by the Jewish Committee on Scouting. There are those hot dogs. And that's Rabbi Ethan Linden, all the way on the right there. I've told this story, but I'm going to mention it again. Rabbi Linden came to our hike as a member of the conservative synagogue here, Shir Chadash, and he knew we were doing kosher food being prepared, and he was very impressed with that. And he turned around to the group there and he said, "How many of you know why we keep kosher? What's the reference?" And the little girl there with the red shirt and the purple jacket shot her hand up, and she said, "It's because it says in the Bible we should not eat a kid in its mother's milk." And the rabbi was amazed. He said, "How did you know that?" She says, "I was on the hike last year." In any event, this is something that you should pass on. This is a lady who came all the way from Atlanta. When she heard about our 10 Commandments hike in New Orleans, she came in to move that program into Atlanta. She was so impressed with what we did. And I hope that the same thing, we plant seeds in scouting, which we hope will grow elsewhere in other councils. And if there are any other questions, I'm happy to entertain them. I just wanted to mention of one thing before anybody asks a question. Joel, you asked about how do you change a rabbi's mind? And Rabbi Hyman says you can't. That's probably right. I had a lady rabbi from the conservative synagogue here who said, "I don't want to do scouting because it may interfere with our youth program." And there was no way to convince her. So you know what? You have to move on at that point. And if anybody has any questions about reaching out to the Orthodox, especially the Chabad community, I have some pointers and to tell you about how I found it to be successful and where you should get some pointers, some experience that I've had. That's pretty much it.
Alan, very good presentation. We have about 2 minutes. If anybody wants to ask a question, maybe turn your, stop your screen share.
Yep, you got it. No problem. Thank you so much.
Any questions? Well, a lot of Jewish committees, local committees do sponsor Ten Commandment hikes or faith walks, as they call them now. And that's, yours certainly looks like one of the better ones. And I know the CW does a wonderful hike in Pittsburgh. And so with that, it's 7:59, and I'll entertain any general questions, or in a minute, we're going to end the video, and Stephen Shore will have this video in a YouTube format, so anybody can see it sometime in the future.
Can I just mention, somebody was asking, Jay Singer asked us, can the PowerPoint be shared? I'm certainly happy to do that. The only thing I would ask, if you don't mind, change the spelling of my name from Sampson to Smason.
Okay.
I'll share mine as well. So Phil, I'll send that to you. Would that be the best thing?
Whatever you'd like to do.
Okay.
Yeah, and Phil, we're actually using Vimeo, not YouTube.
I meant video. Yes, you're using video. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Stephen.